This is an account of a werewolf attack from times yonder, when the world was still a dark and mysterious place. It was written in the journal of a dead man, prized from the fingers of his lifeless, half-eaten corpse aboard a ship that mysteriously beached on French shores. Savagely mutilated and decomposing bodies littered the ship. After its discovery, people in the surrounding area started going missing. The disappearances spread to the region of Gévaudan, where hundreds of people and livestock were murdered and eaten. This is the account of how it started. It held him aloft by the throat, like he weighed no more than a child, his feet kicking futilely at its dense body. I ran, never looking back, until I reached camp, but I fear this thing still hunts us. My name is Richard Wrightson, or Rig to my friends. If I do not make it home, please tell this story and let people know there is a foul evil loose in the world again. The year was 1760. We embarked from the bustling naval port of Dover, destined for the southern tip of Africa aboard the trade ship Crimson Tide. The voyage was to take 4 months. We'd made good speed with favorable winds and were on schedule to arrive in Cape Town until a raging tempest badly altered our course. We battled the storm for several days, losing 5 crew before it released us from its grasp. Damaged and dangerously low on provision, and in desperate need of succor, we drifted aimlessly for 2 days until the welcome sight of albatross and petrels guided us to salvation. Upon sighting the albatross, some of the crew became uneasy, making the sign of the cross on their chests. Curiously, I asked why. "Don't you know, monsieur?" a tall Frenchman replied. "They carry the souls of the dead." A large volcanic island lay before us, crowned in glorious sunlight. Its majestic peak pierced the clouds like a black fang. Sheer, rugged cliff faces blocked our path to land, so we skirted the island until we sighted shore, where seals and penguins frolicked amongst the lapping waves. We dropped line, sounded depth, then cast anchor. On consulting his nautical map, Captain Thorne announced the island was uncharted and certainly uninhabited. Much unlike his name suggests, he hadn't proven to be the proverbial thorn in his crew's side. He was a good man and hadn't deserved that fate. Requiring 2 people for an exploratory expedition, I raised my hand enthusiastically, with the vain notion the island would perchance be named after myself. Willem Tedson also stepped forward. He was as big as a ship's mast, and 3 times the girth. They called him Teddy, because he resembled one of the large, carnivorous creatures that roamed the Pyrenees Mountains where he came from. "We'll set up camp just offshore and await your return," said Captain Thorne. The oars sliced into the waves as the prow of the rowing boat cut a path through them, cleaving the black volcanic sands of the shore. Lush and vivid greenery carpeted the land, reaching up the sloping mountainsides before being intersected by jagged formations of sharp black rock that resembled clawed fingers. We pushed inland for a good 2 miles, advancing up the harsh terrain, until exhausted we reached a high plateau, occupied by wild salt spray tuffets that gave our footing no rest. The heat and humidity were oppressive, so we rested and drank deeply. Halfway across the plateau, the imposing shadow of a cliff face cast about us. It was then Tedson announced he could no longer hear the call of seabirds, which seemed an unusual statement to make, until I too noted the unnatural silence. I looked up. The clouds were descending on us from the peak of the volcano, cloaking us in blinding mist and freezing our extremities. Rain began to lash us like the whip of an angry slave master. We headed toward the cliff face seeking shelter. I gasped, trying to catch my breath through the relentless beating of the torrent. "Look! Up there!" I shouted as I tugged at Willem's massive forearm. "A cave!" With ease, he lifted me to grasp the high ledge, then followed into the mouth of the cave. We congratulated each other on our good fortune while trying to chase the chill from our bones. Unabated, the rain hammered down, causing us to venture further in. The air became warmer the deeper into the darkness we traveled, and the darker it became, the more details were revealed. Bioluminescent flora grew on the slick walls. Glowworms hung from silken threads, patiently waiting their next meal. We wondered on in amazement until a large cavern opened out in front of us. It was bathed in a glorious otherworldly light and filled with stalagmites and stalactites. coated in vibrant, pulsating hues of bright green, orange, and blue. Gentle mist slithered over our feet, obscuring the ripples from the rhythmic dripping that plip-plopped all around us. The smell was dank, yet fresh. My senses were overloaded. We walked through, awe-struck until a harsh reality hit us. Upon a raised stone floor at the back of the cavern, concealed in shadow, was a makeshift wooden table and chair. Upon it lay a writing quill, a pot of ink, and an ancient leather-bound journal next to a candle. "I thought the captain said the island was uninhabited," said Willem. I nodded in agreement, pondering what lay before me. A castaway from a shipwreck mayhap, or a deserter. With rising tension, I noted candle wax dripping down the shaft. "There's someone in here," I said, unholstering my pistol and turning to investigate the deeper shadows. Willem grasped my shoulder, easily redirecting me back to the table and pointing at the journal he had just opened. "This is written in Old French," he said, then started reading. "To whomever, my name is Lucien de Castellan of the House Anjou, 1st Viscount of Maine in the year 1017. I have held many names while living countless lives and feasting on the flesh of the wretches that served me. Centuries have passed me by in the deepest recesses of the earth, bound by cold iron and spell, while countless wars ravaged the land above me, torturing me with the scent of blood that seeped into the earth. Royal decree deemed it no longer safe to harbor such a secret. So, in 1506, I was loaded aboard the ship Trindade, captained by Tristão da Cunha, and brought here, to spend eternity buried beneath a mountain in the middle of the ocean, on the remotest island known to man. If you're reading this, then you realize I am shackled no more, and apologize for the sins of my past and present." Every hair on my body tingled as he finished reading. Then a terrible fear overcame us as a low guttural growl echoed around the cavern, so deep and sinister as if to torment us with the prolonged sound. We looked about frantically, but nothing moved within the soft glow of the cave. Willem grabbed the blunderbuss from across his back and loaded it. I cocked my pistol, hoping desperately the rainwater hadn't dampened the powder. Then the distinct sound of claws raking against rocks screeched out from above. My heart froze at the sight. An immense shadow in beast form was coming towards us. It had been watching from above and moved between the hanging rock formations of the cave roof. Screaming, I pointed the pistol and misfired. Willem pushed me aside, raised the blunderbuss, and shot point blank into the beast's chest as it landed. The flash of the muzzle dazzled me as it lit up its huge gray form. Blood exploded from its chest, but it had not flinched from the shot. Nor could I hear Willem's screams through the deafening report of the gun or the crunching of his facial bones as he was lifted, bodily from the ground by his neck and drawn towards those hideous jaws. I slipped in the myriad reflected colors of the blood-stained water as I fled the cave, expecting death with every footstep. I ran screaming toward the light, leaping the 8 or so feet from the ledge where we'd entered. I broke my ankle on landing. There was no pain at the time, nor had I noticed it had stopped raining as I lay on my back, gasping, waiting for the inevitable, but it never came. And as I stared, terror-stricken at the cave entrance, I noticed something we'd missed in our rush to escape the blinding rain when we'd entered. Deeply carved runes were etched into the rock face and were glowing weakly. But it is not the image of poor Willem that is etched into my memory, and that which haunts and paralyzes me. It is the vision of that monstrosity slamming into the invisible barrier, the only thing keeping it confined to the cave and from ripping me apart. Its huge gray form clawing savagely at the air, snarling with animalistic fury and malevolence in its yellow eyes. I said a prayer for my companion then, thanking him for the shot that must have slowed it just enough, allowing for my escape. It smashed into the barrier again and again, the runes growing dimmer with each impact. I grimaced when I stood, nearly fainting with each agonized step I took back down to camp. Falling at the captain's feet, I screamed at him and the crew like a madman, begging him to leave the island immediately. But they wouldn't listen and didn't believe me until a brilliant blue flash radiated out from upon the black slopes and a primal howl rent the air. "Get in the boat and row for your lives," I shouted. "Pistols won't stop it." Some of the crew rushed gathering up provisions, while others readied weapons and others milled about, still not believing. Then another howl pierced the tension, and the huge form of the beast loomed into view, barreling down the slope towards us. The boat hit the waves, every hand furiously pumping the oars, but we wouldn't escape the shallows before that thing was upon us. Captain Thorne stepped from the boat into the water. Advancing 10 paces, he drew his saber and leveled his pistol. "Row for your life, lads!" he roared. "And pray it can't fucking swim." If you enjoy my content, please claw that like button and consider subscribing for more nightmare, geniusly scary content.